Good evening. We'd like to call the Carroll County Board of Commissioners meeting for May 1st, 2018 at 6 p.m. to order. At this time, we'll call on Susan Mabry for roll call.
Chairman Marty Smith.
Here.
Vice Chair Vicki Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Montrell McClendon.
Here.
Commissioner Tommy Lay.
Here.
Commissioner Michelle Morgan.
Here.
Commissioner Lee Powers.
Here.
Commissioner George Chambers.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. This time, item 3 and 4, we're going to call on Commissioner from District 6, George Chambers, for an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance from Commissioner number 1, Montrell McClendon.
Please bow your heads. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you this evening thanking you for everything that you've done for us and all that you're going to do for us. And Lord, I just pray that the things that are said and done here this evening, Lord, will be for the betterment of your kingdom, be for the betterment of the citizens of Carroll County. And Lord, as always, I pray a special blessing over our men and women who are fighting abroad and both in country, Lord, that they provide the blanket of freedom, Lord, that says nothing's going to happen to you tonight. And Lord, I just pray that the people that are here, that they will be blessed, that as they go home tonight, as we do, that they will be given safe passage home. And it's through your most gracious Son I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 5 on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Look for a motion from the board.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Item 6, approval of the minutes. Item 6.1, you have the work session meeting minutes from March 1st, 2018. 6.2, commission meeting minutes of March 6, 2018, and item 6.3 is special called commission meeting minutes from March 29th of 2018. We'll look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Next item on the agenda is public comments. There's a public comment sign-up sheet in the back. This is a chance for opportunity for anybody to come forward that is not zoning. Typically, we do not respond. If we have a staff person here we can assign you to, we'll be glad to help and assign someone to you if there's an issue we can help with. First one on here, Honorable Sheriff Terry Langley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terry Langley, Carroll County Sheriff, and I guess my address is the Carroll County Jail. I know you have a busy agenda tonight, and I want to just take just a couple of minutes. And first of all, thank you for the job that y'all do. It's a very difficult job and some big decisions to make, and I respect that and appreciate that. And, you know, a lot of people say, Terry, I wouldn't have your job. Well, I can tell you what. I'll take my job, but I don't want your job. You got a tough job, and I appreciate that. Secondly, I appreciate the partnership that you all on the board and Mr. Chairman have had with the Office of the Sheriff, and I appreciate that very much, and just want to thank you for that partnership. An evident of that partnership was, you know, last budget I submitted a 4-year plan in order to get our deputies up to the pay that they deserve. Our deputies not only are behind in the county, they can go to Carrollton or Villa Rica, they can even go to Tanner Security and make more money, and that ought to not be so. Last year, you funded the first year of that plan, and I thank you so very, very much. That's very important, and it made a very positive difference. Yes, there are still turnover in the county, but there's several officers I know for a fact that stayed because not because they were still making the money that they needed to make a living and provide for their families, but because they seen an effort from the board and from the sheriff's office to do something about deputies' pay. And I just politely and request that there be a consideration that you would put in the second year of that plan, if possible, if all possible. Now, I will resubmit that plan if you don't have it at your fingertips, and I know Commissioner McClendon may not have it. I'll be glad, Mr. Chairman, to submit it to all of y'all. It's just I think it's very important and it's imperative that we get these deputies' pay up. And you know, you say, well, they need to be patient. I've been at the sheriff's office 37 years. I've been waiting for 37 years, and some of these deputies have been waiting for 20 years to have a decent salary to provide for their families. And I think they ought to have it. I don't want to be a training ground anymore. And I think this second step will be huge in keeping our officers even more. It will put us into some comparison with the city of Carrollton and the city of Villa Rica, where we can at least be comparable and compete with those jurisdictions here in our county to keep good and qualified people. And, you know, I need them. I need them to stay. Carroll County needs them to stay. I need them to be able to keep these schools safe, keep the streets safe, the roads safe, and our communities and neighborhoods safe. And when I'm constantly training and sending people to the police academy, and I had to put a guy out there with hardly any experience, when I'm losing 6 and 8 year and 10-year experienced guys. So I come to you first to say thank you. I think y'all have listened to me. You've worked very well with me, and I wish you would please consider doing that. These deputies, and you say, well, why should we do something for the deputies? We got all of these other agencies. Well, I assure you, every county employee probably needs a raise. There's no doubt about it. But this is an urgent situation with our deputies, and they need it. And they need to pay quick. They have to be state certified. They have to constantly train to keep that certification. They have to be, we do a performance evaluation every year. They're randomly drug test. And as you know, they are putting their life on the line for you and I. And I wish you would please consider staying with that 4-year plan. And if there's anything I can do, meet with you, discuss, and whatever, I will. So thank you very much for listening to me, and may God bless you, and pray for our public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff, and we
Thank you,
typically hold
Terry.
comments to 3 minutes, and nobody would question you, I assure you. Just a little, and we're fine with that. I'm not going to tell you no. Sheriff, this board is committed. We've met several times on that. In public record here, we'll say that Carroll County, I think this board's committed that we're not going to compromise public safety in Carroll County, so we are working with them, and thank you for coming. Next sign up is Donald Brook. Yes, sir.
My name is Donald Brook. I live at 3821 Shady Grove Road in Carrollton in the Hickory Level community area. I've lived at that address for approximately 5 years now, and for the past 3 years I've been dealing with basically an adjacent property owner, recreational use, and a noise level that it creates for extended periods of times.
Would you mind pulling your microphone up just a
Yes, ma'am.
tad, please?
For the past year, I've engaged various people from the county on this issue, and they have provided some comments and feedback, but it's still an ongoing issue, and I'm seeking to get some additional clarification, primarily in a few topical areas. I know time is short, so on page 2, I've provided a summary of the comments that I would like to say, and I would also like to point out on pages 13 through 15 are some views of the property that are in question. Essentially, I keep coming across portions of the conditional use where this board is responsible for looking at various items when approving conditional use, and those are primarily geared toward if it has adverse effect on surrounding properties, people, property values, and such. While his use of that property is subject to interpretation, I'm not sure that it falls within the permitted uses much less the fact that you are bound to look at those items for conditional use. I would also think that that would be the basis that would compel this individual to request conditional use for that purpose. Approximately 8 months ago, the ownership of this property changed from personal individual to an LLC that he created. Going back and looking over various ordinances, LLCs are relatively new, and I'm not sure that the county ordinances really cover LLCs to any level. But looking at his use of the property, now I question whether or not an LLC has personal recreational use of a property, if that should be considered. At the same time, who is allowed to use a property under an LLC? Any member, which could expand out to countless number of people, and if so, would they also be equally liable for any code issues or whatever with that property? The third item is dealing with erosion and sediment. I've frequented these meetings for the past year to make sure I understand the processes, make sure I look for the right resources before I raise questions concerning such. I feel that that's my responsibility. One of the things that I pointed out as far as 3 years ago is changes that were made to the property and soil runoff during heavy rains. I've looked back, but I look at his activities where he has purposely modified the landscape, has done nothing from putting up barriers or whatever, and over the past 2 years, and I've provided pictures that show that there's still a significant runoff. One of the pictures also shows the proximity to Hominy Creek and the Little Tallapoosa River that this property is primarily adjacent to. I thank y'all very much. I've seen a lot of wonderful things over the past year by frequenting these meetings, and I'm glad to see the audience attendance tonight because, again, like Sheriff Langley, and I had the opportunity to hear when he was asking for additional money, I know that y'all's focus is on building businesses for Carroll County. That is the only way that we can get the tax revenues to do the additional pay and such. But if businesses and people that look at moving to this county don't feel that they're protected by the codes that are already defined, then they're less likely to come to Carroll County. Thank you so much for your time.
And Mr. Brook, thank you for the information. The attorneys have it. Codes is here. We'll let them digest it, and I'll personally call you back, and we'll design a plan. Thank you. That's all for public comments. We'll move on to item number 8, special presentation. Item 8.1, we have a proclamation honoring the Carrollton High School debate team for winning the 2018 GFCA State Championship. I think they are here. If they would come forward, please. And coaches.
Being able to talk in front of an audience.
We're going to read the proclamation, and we have an individual proclamation. We're going to meet down front for a picture and a presentation real quick. We'll meet with a picture. Carroll County, Georgia proclamation, Carrollton High School Debate Team, 2018 GFCA State Debate Champions. Whereas the Carrollton High School Debate Team once again demonstrated superior skill in presentation of logic and persuasiveness by winning the 2018 State Debate Championship, marking the 10th State Debate Championship win in the school's history. And whereas the Carrollton High School State Champion Debate Team includes members Evan Abbey, Edward Bohannon, Cruz Coular, Chase Duncan, Pate Duncan, Hayden Harper, Dylan Michaelitis, Michael Morgan, Ruthie Reeves, LaCurtis Richardson, Harrison Rogers, Gabe Smith, Janice Teal, and Jada Thomas. And whereas the Carrollton High School State Champion debate team is superbly coached by the experienced and resourceful head coach Richard Bracknell and assistant coach Janie Simmons. And whereas by their dedication, talent, and hard work, the team and coaches of Carrollton High School State Championship debate team have brought honor and recognition to the school, the city, and the county. Now therefore, in honor and appreciation for the accomplishments of Carrollton High School debate team and the dedication and support of their coaches and parents, the Carroll County Board of Commissioners does hereby congratulate and commend the 2018 Carrollton High School State Champion debate team for their superior performances and outstanding achievements. In witness thereof, I, Marty W. Smith, Chairman of the Carroll County Board of Commissioners, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of Carroll County, Georgia, to be affixed to this proclamation on the first day of May 2018. Congratulations. Y'all would like to come up and gather around and we'll get one picture up at the top. I'll hand them as you come by. And special recognition, Commissioner Morgan actually has a son on his team. Congratulations.
Hey, should we sit back down?
Down first. Go all the way across.
You want to sit in my chair? Go ahead, you can sit in my chair. Gotta get Marty in here too. We're gonna sit, I guess. We're gonna sit out Alberta's. Where's he?
All right, photo time.
Can you see everybody? You get them all?
It's okay to smile, guys. No live shots in case somebody was fixing their nose or fixing their hair.
Has that got them all?
We got it.
All righty. We'll
I
pass
just want
these
to
out.
add for the record that state debate is not like each level, like 1A or 2A, like in football and other sports. Only one school in the entire state of Georgia wins this debate title. That's really how special it is.
And a word to the students. Mr. Richard Bracknell was my teacher 37 years ago, and if you're not careful, you can turn out like me, so pay attention.
Ruthie.
It is warm in here.
Okay, we will.
Got it.
Well, I think it's just speaking into the mic.
Is that better?
Is that better?
Thank you.
Thank you. It is warm in here.
It is extremely. I do apologize. Now, at this time on the agenda, we'll go to item 9, the financial session. We're going to call on Finance Director Lehman Stevens for a financial recap of item 9.1 and 9.2, the presentation of the proposed FY 2018-19 Carroll County budget.
All right, thank you, Chairman. I'll go over the March 2018 financial highlights first. The March 2018 year-to-date revenues totaled $41,065,828, which is 83% of our budgeted revenues. That compares to March 2017 of $38,873,000. So we've had an increase in revenues of $2.1 million for the fiscal year. The expenditures March 2018 year-to-date total $35,502,000, which is 72% of the general fund budgeted expenditures. This compares to March 2017 of $35,400,000, so we've only had an increase in expenditures of $102,000. The fund balance at March 31st, 2018 totaled $15,725,000 compared to March 31st, 2017 of $12,530,000, so the fund balance has increased $3,060,000. General fund cash on March 31st totaled $16,557,000 compared to March 2017 of $14,199,000, an increase of $2.3 million. And the March 31st balance is approximately 122 days of operating cash.
Any questions for Lehman on item 9.1? Seeing none, Lehman, go to item 9.2.
They're passing out the budget pack for you. I'll wait till everyone has theirs. All right, the package you've just been given contains the chairman's proposed balanced budget for fiscal year 19 as required by the County Code of Ordinances. The budget has been developed with input from county department heads and other constitutional officers. The proposed budget anticipates general fund revenues of $50,263,500. This is an increase of $981,800 over the fiscal year 18 budget. This is based on real and economic growth. There is no anticipated millage rate increase in the proposed budget. The expenditures of the proposed budget totals $50,263,500, which includes a contingency fund of $125,000. On the left side of the packet is the advertisement that will be published in the legal organ of the county as required by the County Code of Ordinances. It informs the public that a budget hearing will be held to obtain public input on May the 29th at 10 a.m. The first sheet is the general fund budget by source of revenue and the department totals. The second page are the special revenue funds of the county and the debt service fund of the county that we also have to develop a budget for. Behind the ad is a detail of the anticipated changes in revenue, which details the $981,000 that in increases. You've also been provided the revenue budgets for fiscal year 17 and 18 for comparison purposes behind this recount. On the right side of the packet, the first thing you have are the notes to the proposed budget appropriations. This details major changes from the fiscal year 18 budget to the amounts in the proposed budget. Also, requests that were made by departments but not included because of funding are provided for your information. Behind the notes is a recap sheet by function of the general fund, and behind the recap sheet are details of the department budgets, and on the departments you also have the fiscal year 17 and 18 budgets on a line-by-line basis for comparison. The recap sheet provides you with the number of full-time and part-time positions of each department and the current number of vacant positions of the departments. And I will remind you that a budget work session is scheduled for May 8th.
May 8th at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, any questions for Lehman?
Is the sheriff's second year in this?
There is money provided. Now, in my meeting with the sheriff, he did tell, well, with his deputies, told me that they were not going to request the 3 new positions because they currently have 12 vacant positions in the sheriff's department. And also those 12 vacant positions, if they're unfilled, there is funds for the raises. And that's how we discuss funding the raises at the present time.
Anything further for Lehman? Not, look forward to seeing everyone on May 8th at 4. Now we'll move on to item 9.3, auction of county property. We'll call on County Attorney Stacy Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We have a proposed resolution for an auction of surplus personal property of the county as well as some real estate. We have 53 lots at Fairfield Plantation as well as 2 at Harper's Way, and the proposal is to sell these at an auction by contract with Hagan Realty, and to authorize the chairman, if there are any other personal property items, to add those to the sale and run the legal ad and to conduct the auction.
Look for a motion from the board.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Item 9.4, we'll call on Public Works Director, Mr. Charles Pope, for a coal planer purchase.
Thank you, Chairman, Board of Commissioners. The coal planer, we talked about at the work session, just a small version of the milling machine that the DOT uses to mill roads down. The invitations would be sent out 4/10 of 18, to be returned back 4/23 of 18, and then we received 3 successful bidders. Border equipment is $32,899. Flint equipment is $31,000. Yancey Brothers, which is CAT equipment, is $27,160. And I would recommend going with the CAT equipment.
Look for a motion from the board.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
That's motion to approve. Is that the low bid?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, Charles. Well, Charles, stay there. You're item 9.5 as well, replacement truck from Public Works Department.
The truck we currently had, we got from the Sheriff's Department that they confiscated in 2004. The truck had over 1 million miles on it. We had an accident January the 24th. It overturned, totaled the truck. The insurance paid off, and what we're just looking for is to replace that truck. And Georgia Truck Sales here in town has the vehicle to replace it. It was $34,000. He let us have it, let the county have it for $32,000.
I make a motion to accept the bid.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
My question is just where's the money coming from?
Lehman?
There is amount designated in the 2013 SPLOST for the road equipment.
For road equipment. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, Charles. Next item on the agenda is item 9.6, Integrated Criminal Justice Case Management System. We're going to call on Clerk of Court, Mr. Alan Lee.
Thank you for having me here today, Board and Commissioner Smith. I'm a little bit nervous, a little bit tired. It's been a long day, so I'm going to be very, very brief. I think I'm perfectly willing to answer any question or elaborate as much as we need to, but we talked a lot at the work session, so I'll be very brief. Just asking for approval on our request for bids on the Integrated Criminal Justice Case Management System, which I like to lovingly call our criminal e-file pilot that we've been working on for about 2 years now. So if I need to go further, I will. If not,
I make a motion to accept the e-criminal file. I forgot. I'm sorry, Alan. It just
And I'll second it.
That is.
the case management system.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
once again, of just where, how much is this gonna cost now?
Okay, the proposal is for $525,000 for the completion of the project that we've been working on, paid for with SPOS dollars.
And inclusive for the next,
Inclusive of finishing the program, and that's the total cost. With no annual fees. And I
They are
have
lo-
the members of the Peach Court guys here.
and they are located here to where.
Local company.
Yeah, so you're not worried about your service.
That's right.
And we have SPOS dollars for that Lehman assignment?
Lehman?
Yes, ma'am, there is money that right now is in the undesignated line that would need to be designated to make this payment.
One-time payment?
Yes.
One-time payment, Mr. Johnson? Thank you.
Motion and second is there. Any further discussion? Seeing none from the board, all those in favor?
Thank you, Board.
All those opposed, thank you. Alan, thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda, we'll be moving into item 10 under the business session. Item 10.1, if you saw in your books and your pamphlets over the last 2 weeks, we put in there the nominations from the Carrollton City and County Hospital Authority and put a list of names. I did confer with the mayor of Carrollton and submitted the letter. They are going to be voting at city council as well at their next meeting, and that has been approved, and we just need approval tonight to submit that letter to the board.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Next item, item 10.2, 10.3, and 10.4. We're going to call on Stacy Blackman, County Attorney. They're all consideration resolutions to abandon property, and this is simply to initiate the process to where we can advertise. We will hold a public hearing. So if it's okay and the pleasure of the board, we will vote on all three of them once she explains them. They're all abandonments. If you have any individual questions, feel free.
Thank you. The first one is on Clayton Place, and this is a request by the Bowens who purchased all the property surrounding a portion of Clayton Place, and they obtained the written consent of their neighbor. So, and then the second one is on Hutchison Ferry Road, and this was a right-of-way deed granted by Mr. Lyle to pave and widen the road. The work has been done, and there's just a portion of the right-of-way that was not needed for the road work, so he's asking for a 0.15 acres to be abandoned back to him. And the third one is Wildwood Lane, and it's Miss Imogene Frazier. Again, she signed a right-of-way deed for the widening and paving of a road. We didn't end up using that right-of-way. All the right-of-way was used from the neighbor across the road. So asking to begin the process to abandon those. We'd advertise it in the paper and consider it at a public hearing next month.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve items 10.2, 10.3, and 10.4. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Thank you.
All those opposed? Thank you. Now we'll be moving into item number 11, into the zoning sessions. We're going to call on County Planner, Ms. Janet Hyde.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. The first item that I have for you tonight is a rezoning application, Z-18-03-01. The applicant is Danny Turner. He's asking to rezone property from agriculture to R2 residential. He wants to use this piece of property to build a single-family dwelling. He also wants to split a portion of this property in order to add 2 lots in the adjacent subdivision, which is Preston Place. The property consists of 3.84 acres. It's tax parcel number 0600268. It's in Commission District 6. This is the corner of Bowden Road and Farmers High. And the applicant is present.
Okay, the applicant will come forward. We'll go ahead and read the policies and procedures. The applicant or anyone speaking in favor of the application request shall be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present their request. Anyone opposed to the request shall also have a total of 10 minutes to present their opposition. If there are multiple speakers for or against an application, ask them to please be mindful to allow for others to speak should they wish to do so. Anyone speaking for or against the application shall be allowed a total of 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal of both sides.
Excuse me, Mr. Turner. Mr. Chairman, because we have so many citizens here concerning the application of C-18-03-01 for a large conference and event center venue facility on Martin Cemetery, and there were complaints about the lack of time to present at the recent Plan and Zoning meeting, I'd like to make a motion to extend the time for the applicant and opposition on this application from 10 minutes to 15 minutes for their presentation and from 5 minutes to 10 minutes for rebuttal.
We have a motion and a second for the second presentation to change the times from 10 to 15 and rebuttal from 5 to 10. Motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
In regards to all of these, both of these?
Just the second
Just the
application.
second one. The other one will stay 10, 10, 5, and 5 as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. State your name,
Thank you.
application, and your goals here.
I'm Danny Turner, and it's an honor to be before this board, and I would not want your job again, like was said earlier, but thank you for doing a good job. But there's a piece of property right behind my house. It's on the corner of Highway 166 and Farmers High Road. It's 3.84 acres. It's zoned agriculture. And what I'm asking to do is to rezone it resident R2. And right now, there's only one really buildable lot on, even when it's zoned agriculture. So it's going to still just have one buildable lot. And since we changed to residential, it would be a stick-built house and not a mobile home. I'm not against mobile homes, but our neighbors would really like the stick-built house. And the rest of the property, it's like a long, if you can see there, it's just like a long finger lot. And the rest of the lots, we were just going to add to the back of our current subdivision lots. We would not build on them. There would not be an access from the Farmers High into our lots. It'd just be added land to protect behind our homes, to keep somebody from building back there.
Fantastic. Kenny, you've got plenty of time under the 10 minutes. Is anybody else here in favor that needs to speak?
I didn't think about just
It's fine
no,
if
sir.
not. Just want to clear and make sure the timekeeper's keeping time. We want to make sure we're there. With that being said, we'll ask at this time, is there anyone here in opposition of item 11.1, Mr. Turner requesting a rezoning? We're going to request a second time. Is there anyone here in opposition of item 11.1 for 50 Farmers High Road? Seeing none, we'll ask for any questions from the board.
How big will that lot be?
1.74 acres.
Okay.
Almost 1 3/4 acres.
Any other questions from the board or staff?
So in order to do the one, just the one, you're saying that on this 3.84 acres, only, how much, you said 1 point something acres is
1.78.
only buildable?
After you get over the rise, it starts going down the hill, and that's what goes behind our house. So it would actually be great to add to our lots, because it wouldn't be a good lot to build on anyway, because it does go down the hill. So the 1.74 acres on top of the hill. It's a really good building lot. We've cleared it off, and it looks good, and that's really the only buildable spot there.
The rest of it slopes downhill. So you'd have to build it up if you wanted to.
Talking in your microphone.
Turn, yeah.
And you're going, how much from that 1.78 to 3.84, how many lots will you add that to? Just one other lot?
No, it's the back of I own 3 of those lots. The house that I live on and 2 lots next door. So those will be added to mine, and then 2 neighbors.
Okay.
And they're,
He would just be extending
Yes.
the property line.
yes, sir.
Okay. So it's like we're not trying to go out there and build houses?
No,
on-
there's
Okay.
one building lot now, and there'll be one building lot when you approve, if
An
you approve.
expansion of the other lots.
That's right.
Okay.
Any other questions from staff or board? Seeing none, we'll ask for a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Now, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Mr. Turner, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Board.
Absolutely.
The next item that I have is a conditional use, application C-18-03-01. The applicant is John Paulk. The tax parcel number is 090-0144. This is on Martin Cemetery Road. It's Commission District 4, Michelle Morgan's district. Mr. Paulk has applied for conditional use for a large conference and event center venue facility with a maximum event size of 500 guests, serving as a location for special events, but not limited to weddings, receptions, anniversary receptions, bar and bat mitzvah receptions, birthday, holiday parties, company events, and any other similar parties, receptions, or events. The applicant owns 155.78 acres. He wants to dedicate 6.5 acres for a large special event center. The future plans for this entire tract are to construct a shop/barn and a residence and skeet shooting range, which are not related to the 6.5 acre special event venue tract. As you all may know, the Planning Commission recommended approval of this project, but for reasons stated, staff is recommending denial of this conditional use permit. For the special event venue, the applicant has submitted photographs that are in your packet and a floor plan of a similar facility that he plans to construct on the property. This is a commercial type facility that resembles an Italian villa with a commercial kitchen and can accommodate up to 500 guests. The applicant has stated that he plans to have multiple events happening at the same time. For previous special event venues that have been approved in the county, there were existing structures that were typically barns, where the primary use of the property was agriculture, and the event venue was an accessory use to provide secondary income to the landowner. In those previous cases, the structure could be converted back to its original use, such as the barn being returned to being a barn, should the need arise. Mr. Paulk's proposal is of an intensity that represents a commercial use and exceeds the intent of the ordinance. If this facility is approved and built, it would change the character of the neighborhood. The sketch of the property in your packet does not include the following information required by the application: proposed building location, driveway, septic tank, and other additional structures, and setback lines. No traffic or parking plan has been proposed by the applicant. Events with up to 500 guests could create traffic flow problems because of the narrow bridge on Martin Cemetery Road near the intersection with Hayes Mill. There is a road network around the proposed site that includes Martin Cemetery Road, Buffalo Creek Road, Hayes Mill Road, Bonner Road, and Roy North Road. None of these roads is of a standard that would support a commercial use, as the majority of the property in the area is agriculture. Martin Cemetery Road is also part of a bike path network used frequently on evenings and weekends by bike enthusiasts. This bike path is recognized by the county's comprehensive plan as a recreational path and intercity connection, connecting the city of Carrollton with the city of Alton. Mr. Paulk submitted a conditional use application over 12 months ago for an event center which included an outdoor shooting range. Mr. Paulk also, at that time, submitted a rezoning application to rezone the property from ag to commercial for an event center. He withdrew the conditional use application, and the rezoning was denied by this board. He's now suing the county over those applications. Nothing in our ordinance limits him from filing a new application for the same use after 12 months. Mr. Paulk is also suing the county to have an outdoor skeet shooting range at the property. And the applicant is here.
All righty. Thank you, Janet. At this time, we'll call on the applicant or anyone speaking in favor of this project.
Mr. Chairman, my name is David Flint. What is this? I'm representing Mr. Paulk. This property, which consists of 156 acres, is zoned agricultural. So I want to first talk to you about what this application does not involve. This is not a rezoning. The property remains agricultural. We have submitted a land planner's report on the uses allowed in the agricultural zone, and there are many uses more intense than an event center. And that's in this, those are the documents that have been submitted. The county attorney has assured me that you've had the opportunity to read those documents. I won't ask you if you have, but they're over there for your review. So this is not a rezoning. This is an agricultural zoning which will remain agricultural. This is not an application for a gun range or a skeet shooting facility. That is not at issue tonight whatsoever. As the planning director said, there is a lawsuit involving a skeet shooting range, but that has nothing to do with this application. Now, what happened in this situation is Mr. Paul came in to get the event center. He made an application, and he was told by the county, well, you can't put it in an agricultural zone. You have to rezone it commercial. And so he filed for a commercial zoning on a 6.5 acre tract to put the event center. That rezoning was denied. He was also told that there could be a text amendment to the zoning ordinance which would allow this use in the agricultural zone. And sure enough, the county then amended the ordinance. And that amendment was made in July 11, 2017. And I'm sure you've seen that because you passed it, but it recognizes that special event centers can be allowed and are allowed in agricultural zoning. And there are three types. There's a small event center, an intermediate event facility, and a large event facility. All of these are allowed by conditional use permit. So after that was done, Mr. Paul came in and said, well, I want to have an event center on 6 acres. I believe it's 6.5 acres. And it requires a special use permit. So if you go and look at what the standards are for allowing the special use permit, they're not objective. They're subjective. Not objective, subjective, which means that you can't tell whether you get one or not. There have been 8 granted by Carroll County, all 8 of them. I heard the planning department ladies say were because they could revert back to an agricultural use. But there's nothing in the ordinance that talks about that. Every special use permit which has been sought was granted. And so if you look at the standards, they're objective, they're subjective, there's no objective standards. He's met every standard that's in there. And we have again given cases, ironically, 2 of which I handled. One of them is FSL Corporation versus Harrington, involved in landfill, where the county refused to grant a special use permit, and the Supreme Court of Georgia said it's too vague. There's no objective standards or criteria. The other case, and we've given you copies of these, is crimes. That was the DeKalb County case. Same thing, vague, no standards. So you're not in a position to do what you want to. There has to be some objective standards. Now, the next thing that I want you to understand is that, excuse me, We've given you a lot of evidence, and the county attorney and the attorney for the intervenors have both been very professional. We've tried to gather all this for you to review, and I urge you to look at the evidence before you make a decision, because there has to be a standard which says why this was done. And the only thing the county planning department says is that they said, well, these other ones that were granted could go back to agricultural, not in the ordinance. It also said you didn't have everything on the application that we require. That's not true. There was a pre-application conference, and it was checked off. Everything that was requested by the county has been submitted. There are no secrets here. It's a large event center, which you have authorized to be in an agricultural zone. So you're not dealing with a rezoning. You're not dealing with a gun range or a skeet shooting range. You're simply saying that you will allow an event center for Mr. Paulk that's authorized and spelled out by the ordinance you adopted in July of 2017, and that he'll be treated the same way that all the other applicants have been, that you're not going to discriminate against him and tell 8 other people, yes, you can have a permit, but Mr. Paulk, you can't. So I think I've got some more time I'll reserve.
Pardon? We're at 7 minutes. Allowed 15. If there's anyone else, the applicant or anyone else speaking in favor of this conditional use permit. Last, a second request. Anybody for the unused minutes under initial 15, applicant or anyone in favor to speak on this project? Seeing none, we'll move to the second 15 minutes, and we'll now call on anyone opposed or opposition to this request.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Commission, thank you for this time to address you all. My name is Tommy Greer. I represent the intervenors, is what we're called. We're neighbors out in the area where this would exist if it's approved. I represent a significant number of those neighbors who would be dramatically and negatively impacted by this commercial facility that Mr. Paulk proposes to build. 31 of those neighbors, as has been mentioned, are named parties in a lawsuit in Superior Court. I agree with Mr. Flint on one thing. You're not here tonight to decide the issue of a gun range or a skeet shooting range. However, you're also not required to decide this issue in a vacuum either, because unless the hearing date is moved on May 9th, there is a hearing in which Mr. Paulk fully intends to ask for a skeet shooting range and a gun shooting range on the same property that this facility would be constructed with the capacity to shoot up to 10,000 rounds a day. I'm not asking that you take that into account in this vote, but I'm asking that you not put blinders on and totally ignore what the big picture is here either. And I'll direct my attention now to the event facility. I'm confident I speak for a host of others, in addition to 31 people that I represent in Superior Court. And with the board's permission, I would just ask that quietly I be allowed to ask those here in opposition to stand, or if they're standing, to raise their hand, if I can do that.
Absolutely.
Would you stand if you're in opposition? Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. You may be seated. It is important that I persuade you, if I can, that what Mr. Paulk actually intends to build and operate and call an event center is an event center in name only. It would be in a different solar system from the event centers previously approved by this board, which actually beautifully adorn this county in the way that the staff director described. This is not Whitecrest Farms. This is not a quaint barn facility. In the event center world, this would be the equivalent of a Walmart in a rural area. In the event center world, this would be a three-ring circus that operated from 8 a.m. to midnight, closer to a nightclub than to an event center. And I expect to demonstrate that with words from Mr. Paulk himself, as spoken in his deposition in just a minute or two with the board's permission. But first I want to emphasize this. When Mr. Flint talks about the fact that we do allow conditional use permits, we acknowledge that. But what he conveniently ignores is that the umbrella, which overrides everything else, the very first governing predicate, says this: the agricultural district is intended to preserve the open character of certain land within the county and to promote the development of a type which does not require extensive public facilities and services. That is the guiding principle by which all the exceptions are to be considered, and that's what we're asking the board to do respectfully tonight. With that in mind, we don't have to guess about what Mr. Paulk plans. He laid it out in plain language under oath in two separate depositions. The excerpts from those depositions highlighted already in the record, having been introduced at Planning and Zoning, and the entire deposition's in the record. To try to be efficient of and respectful of your time, I'm going to briefly summarize, though, what Mr. Paulk said under oath. Mr. Paulk said under oath that what he proposes is vastly different than any event center that's been previously approved by this board. Those are his words on page 80 of his deposition. Under oath, he says that it will be available for rental use 365 days a year, that proposed hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 12 midnight, that there will be full bands and DJs both inside and outside, that music can be played up until midnight for any event, that there will be a full-time commercial kitchen that will be staffed, that there will be a lighted event facility and a lighted parking lot with 250 spaces. To give you an optic to use by comparison, the main parking lot at Lowe's has 285 spaces, lighted. That is huge, if you can recall it. The center will be large enough to host 500 people and to have 4 events running at the same time. This is the third time that the staff has said that Mr. Paulk has not addressed traffic concerns. We were told at the Planning and Zoning Commission by Mr. Flint that if he had known that traffic was a concern, they would have addressed it then. Well, here we are, weeks later. He knows that the director still says traffic is a concern, and we still don't have a traffic plan for what could be up to 250, 300 cars and 500 people. It will serve alcohol. He plans to have a pouring license. His statement was, we will have a pouring license, and it will be a for-profit operation. As I said again, it's just a footnote for tonight's consideration, but he still has pending a request that's tethered to this that would allow for a skeet shooting range and a gun range and 10,000 rounds a day. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Mr. Paulk is an astute businessman. I salute him for that. I have no doubt that he would build a very nice facility. We respectfully submit on behalf of the neighbors that he could not have picked a worse place to do it. These people I speak for and dozens of others who are still running businesses or doing other things bought, built, improved, and cared for houses and nurtured land with a promise contained in the comprehensive plan adopted by this board that they could live out their lives in a quiet, serene setting. Whether you're talking about the event center or the tethered operation of a gun shooting range, this is not going to be a serene setting anymore. Mr. Paulk is asking you, I submit, to strike a match to the comprehensive plan and to drop a commercial nuclear bomb in the middle of their serenity. We're respectfully pleading with you not to allow that. The criteria governing your decision are set forth in the zoning ordinance at section 13.0, subsection 7. I take exception with Mr. Flint's statement that those standards are not objective. They are very objective. Start with the traffic plan. That is not subjective. That's an objective criteria. Start with the hours of operation. That's not subjective. That is, that's objective. Start with law enforcement and safety concerns. Safety concerns are not subjective. They are objective. Whoever drafted and adopted this ordinance included sufficiently objective standards for this board to make a decision. And just because we adopted conditional use permits, we did not repeal the fact that the granting of any permit is discretionary in this board. At this point, I'm going to allow, I'm up, am I done?
No, sir.
Okay.
Just give an update on time. 8 minutes. You're good.
I'm about done. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to surrender the remainder of my time and a lot of my rebuttal time to neighbors who will address these criteria. Again, we will try to be very efficient and respectful of the additional time that the board has granted us, and we thank you for doing that tonight because of its importance to this neighborhood. We have an agreement, I think, that the three lawyers, Mr. Flint and Mr. A.V. Jackson and Ms. Blackman and I have all worked cooperatively. We think the record is pretty much complete. I think, Mr. Flint, correct me if I'm wrong, we have agreed that if we need to supplement the record due to an inadvertent admission, I think we've all agreed we can do that. All right. And with that, I only have 2 additional exhibits in addition. That lowers the number of exhibits I need. I would like to tender interveners exhibits 6 and 7. One is a blown up aerial photograph in color of the proposed location of the site and the serenity that surrounds that site. Intervener 7 is an 8x11 copy of the same thing, so a little easier for you to hold in your hand if you want to look at it. With that, I thank you very much for your time, and I will take the exhibits over there or here. Where do I take the exhibits? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Guyton Cochran. I reside at 505 Bonner Road, across the street from the property in question. As Chief Financial Officer for Southwire Company for the past 15 years, much of my responsibility has revolved around planning and growth for Southwire Company, very much in line with Board of Commissioners' responsibilities for managing Carroll County's roadmap for future growth. I applaud my public officials and volunteers for the thousands of hours and probably millions of dollars that have been invested in ensuring this county's roadmap for the future is well thought out. Would Carroll County's visionaries approve the conditional use for this property? We all know there are more appropriate locations in the county for this proposal. Just use Carroll County's roadmap. Thank you for your time and consideration tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Commission, my name is Betty Daniel. I live at 121 Shady Lane, just off of Bonner Road, and less than a mile from the Polk property. My husband and I have resided there since 1971, and we have acquired 3.5 acres to provide the solitude that peace, that space and privacy allow. Martin Cemetery was a dirt road when we moved there in 1971, and it stayed that way until well into the 1980s when the county paved it. According to Charles Pope with the Carroll County Public Works, Martin Cemetery Road is a Class 3 road with a weight-restricted bridge that was built in 1960. The Class 3 road is permitted for up to 300 vehicles per day. To permit a facility with space for 250 vehicles would make a mockery of that permitting. Furthermore, a fire truck, as well as a tractor trailer and others, are not permitted on that 60-year-old bridge. These facts do not begin to address the additional traffic that would be added both to Hayes Mill Road and Bonner Road. That traffic, mixed with alcohol, could be deadly. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you. Update on time, please.
Hello, my name is Ron Cryer at 474 Buffalo Creek Road. I represent myself, my family, and dozens of other families as well that are having to deal with this issue. I share the same thought process that Sheriff Langley did regarding the spending plan that he was talking about. And I guess that's what we're asking you to do, is stay with the plan. The comprehensive land plan that you guys have so well put together protects people like me and people like our neighbors from this very development. That land plan talks about 13 items that are required that you have the latitude to judge as you review a development, 10 of which this development failed to satisfy the litmus test. Just like Commissioner Anderson, I think the very first question I'd be asking is, where's the money? And you've heard some of our other people talk about the road situation, the traffic signal situation, utilities, traffic, and let's not forget the loss of property tax values that'll be impacted by this development. Early on in this process, John Paulk's daughter spoke about a dream she had to create this business and put this development into production. And we're the last ones on the face of the earth that want to crush that dream. But at the same time, we don't want our dreams crushed either. Each and every neighbor in that region bought their property with plans of quiet enjoyment, solitude, and a way to make and a place to raise a family. That's being threatened severely now by this development. In closing, I just ask that you do stick to the comprehensive plan, protect our neighborhood and our investments, and preserve the potential that I believe, having been in the development business and construction business, that this area has for the future. The tech park, the low-density homes, commensurate developments that support this area and define the urban growth that the comprehensive land plan outlines. Thank you.
Thank you. Update on time. All right, speak and so it'll be recorded, please. 1 minute. Okay. Does anybody want that 1 minute? Ask a second time. 1 minute left in opposition. Seeing none, we will go to the 10-minute that we voted on and approved for the rebuttal. So we ask the applicant or those in favor for the 10-minute rebuttal.
Are you saying I have 10 minutes or 5 minutes each?
You have 10 minutes
Okay.
combined time for the rebuttal.
Okay.
In favor.
The Carroll County zoning ordinance allows the following uses in agricultural zones: single-family dwellings or two-family dwellings, commercial, forest, agricultural, dairying, poultry, livestock, non-commercial agricultural, horses, dairying, livestock, greenhouses, schools, colleges, publicly owned community structures, public utility structures, public parks, playgrounds, community buildings, golf courses, privately owned nurseries, preschools, kindergartens, churches, clubs, private or public, golf and country clubs, fishing and hunting clubs, and other similar enterprises, development of natural resources, removal of minerals, so forth and so on. That was the ordinance that was in existence when Mr. Paulk first came in and said he wanted to get a permit for a special event facility. The county said, no, it's not allowed in agricultural, it has to be commercial. So we went for commercial zoning. It was denied. Then the county adopted a new ordinance. And I think it's imperative that you read this. I can find it. This was adopted on July 11, 2017. This was after the commercial rezoning was denied. It was without our knowledge. We found out about it later. But it says that the Board of Commissioners has determined that the unclassified use of special event facilities is consistent with the character and intent of conditional uses in the agricultural zoning district. So you already made a determination that this is consistent with those other types of uses. And it says that the Board of Commissioners resolved and ordains to amend Section 4 of the zoning regulations to add a definition of a special event facility. And you then define it. It's any place kept, used, maintained, advertised, or held out to the public as a location for special events, including weddings, receptions, anniversary receptions, bar and bat mitzvah receptions, corporate events, retirement receptions, employee appreciation, those types of things. And then you went further and you said there are 3 categories. One is a small special event facility, and that's to be located on a parcel with 4 acres or larger. And then 2 intermediate, and that's to have a maximum guest of 250, and that has to have a parcel size of 25. And here's the important provision. This is what Mr. Polk is asking for, and to which I think he's entitled to by law, and I think for you to deny it is unconstitutional. It says, large special events facilities shall mean a special event facility with a maximum event size of 500 guests, that's what he's applied for, located on a minimum parcel size of 50 acres or more. His parcel size is 156 acres. So this board has already determined that this is consistent, a consistent use in an agricultural zoning, and if you look at the other uses that you could do in agricultural, they're much more intense. You could have a hog farm, chicken houses, any kind of agricultural activity. This is agricultural zone property, and this is an appropriate use of that property. And emotions sometimes get in people's way of reason, but I think that if you apply your own ordinance and your good judgment and reason, you will grant this special use permit, and that certainly takes care of at least half of the litigation we've got going on with the county. Won't be an issue anymore. Or you're going to have to leave it up to the courts to decide it. Thank you.
Thank you. Time, 5 minutes left in the rebuttal for any applicant or anyone in favor. Ask a second time. Anybody under the rebuttal for the applicant or in favor of this conditional use? Seeing none, we'll waive the time. We'll now start the 10 minutes for those in opposition of this request.
Good evening. My name is Bill Waters, and my wife Teresa and I live at 1691 Hayes Mill Road. We're here to strongly urge you to oppose the application by the applicant to allow an event center and shotgun sports facility on Martin Cemetery Road. While tonight's discussion may not be about the shotgunning facility, we all know that the entire matter does revolve around that. The proposed use of this property is not remotely in keeping with the Commission's plan for this residential area. Allowing the project would deprive residents of the use and enjoyment of their property and homes and severely damage their property values, a fact which would have direct implications for the tax base. Our commissioners should consider that the proposed use would allow for a 7-day-a-week operation from 8 a.m. until midnight in a residential neighborhood of a facility which creates up to tens of thousands of shotgun blasts a day and is planned for up to 500 attendees at a commercial entertainment facility which serves alcohol and has no traffic management plan. Some have tried to spin that the opposition to this application is coming from anti-gun factions and from those who oppose development of any type other than large estates. Well, I guess I'm living proof that that's simply not true. I'm a life and benefactor member of the National Rifle Association and own, well, my wife's in the room, so I can't say how many guns I own, but Teresa and I live next door to a trailer park we have a 50-acre farm there. We live right next door to a trailer park. That trailer park was there when we moved in. We don't begrudge those people a place to live. They work hard. They're Americans. They're county citizens just like we are. They have every right to be there, and we're standing up for them tonight. So not only is this not a discussion about pushing down higher density residential development as has been discussed, that's not the issue. The issue here is to preserve the residential nature of the area. That seal behind you says that this is the county of opportunity, and I believe that that's true. A decision to allow this would be disastrous for the residents of this area and would eliminate any confidence of those investing in Carroll County that their investment has sound management oversight. We really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Kessler, and I live at 315 Colonial Drive. It's within a mile of the proposed property. I just want to address an issue in terms of if there does exist an active events facility, that's going to cause a shift of resources for public safety and welfare. Sheriff's Department's going to have to invest more officer time in terms of patrols in the region. You're going to have more time in terms of possibility of fire and EMT folks coming out there in the ambulance. So if you have an active business, commercial enterprise going on, you're going to have to realize that the county's going to have to pay the bill to have additional law enforcement and public safety there. You've already heard from your finance director that the Carroll County Sheriff's Office has got 12 vacancies. What I'd like to also address is this, is that if you look at Exhibit A on the application for the location of the 6 acres for the property, it's located right on Martin Cemetery Road, but near Bonner, the intersection with Bonner Road. And that intersection right there,
Speaking to the mic, please.
if you look at the map, there are plenty of residences right there at that intersection in terms of that location. My question to you is there a hidden agenda with regards to event activity center? Shouldn't it be located closer to the Hayes Mill area where there's not that many residences on that road? And shouldn't it be located maybe in the center part away from Martin Cemetery Road, as opposed for the 6 acres being planned right there, Exhibit A, right there along Martin Cemetery Road, and then all the rest of that 150 acres is left vacant? Maybe this event center should be placed over to the proposed residence that Mr. Paulk wishes to build at a later point in time. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Time. 6 minutes left in opposition. Rebuttal.
I'm Mark Lipham, and I'm a medical doctor here. I've been here for 35 years. I have the only residence that has a Martin Cemetery Road address. And I'll justify that when I first moved there in 82 or 83, Martin Cemetery Road was a dirt road. But I don't have much to say they hadn't already said, except that what they're talking about here is not the same thing that's talked about and we have in the county right now. This is a commercial venture. This is not a special event center. This thing's going to run 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. The other places, they come in there for a few hours here and a few hours there, and they're not open the rest of the time. They're going to have a functional bar and grill that the other ones don't have, and the other event centers do not have a skeet shooting range where people shoot thousands to tens of thousands of times a day. The only thing that I would say otherwise is that I would prefer in the morning when I get up to hear the birds singing rather than the shotgun shooting. And at night when I go to bed, I don't want to hear the guitars playing.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Miller. I live at 442 Buffalo Creek Road. And Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I want to apologize for the long letter I sent y'all, and I think y'all probably had to, I don't know if you got to read it or not. I had a lot of trouble sending it. If you did read it, though, a lot of my thoughts are in that letter. But a couple of additional things besides, all the traffic that we talked about, there's a lot of expense the county would incur if this actually takes place. There is no way to manage that traffic coming off that road at either end without traffic lights. All the hoops you have to jump through just to get a traffic light put up, that would have to happen. Or it would only be a matter of time till the next fatality would happen, just like the fatality that happened in my front yard that I talked about in that letter. One of the points as far as what qualifies as whether this is a reasonable request is whether or not the proposed use will result in a nuisance as defined under state law. So I looked that up today. It says that anything, and it changes that to any act also later on in this definition, anything that causes hurt, inconvenience, or damage to another, and the fact that the act done may be otherwise lawful, shall not keep it from being a nuisance. Now, we may be in a unique situation where we are as far as how the sound carries. It sounds like, when they did a sound test, it's been over a year ago when they were shooting the guns, we heard them as though they were in just in our neighbor's yard. And that may be because of the acoustics. Well, if they play loud music till midnight, the same thing, it's going to carry across those trees. And like I said in the letter, so far I have refrained from playing loud music outside. But, what's fair for one's fair for the other. I don't care. But I just really don't want to hear that coming across those trees at night when I otherwise would be hearing the birds and the sounds of the night. It's a beautiful thing to live in Buffalo Creek. You never heard anything like those croakers when they start hollering. They will drown out everything, but they won't drown that out. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Time. 1 minute and a half left under the 10-minute rebuttal.
My name is Cameron Covert. I live at 300 Buffalo Creek Road. I'm a retired professor from the University of West Georgia. My wife, Boyce, is here, who's currently teaching at Oak Mountain Academy. We bought 25 acres on Buffalo Creek Road 21 years ago. We enjoy the serenity. It was 3 miles from my job. I can walk out our backyard about 100 yards, and we are on Paulk's property. Now, 2 things were interesting when we moved out there that I wasn't aware of because I always lived in the city. One is hunting and the other is football. Right. November would come, 6 o'clock in the morning, the first thing we hear are gunshots. Buffalo Creek is a wetland. People are shooting ducks. But hunting season only lasts 3 months, and it's done. Now, what about football? We live 2 miles from Carrollton High School. They have 6 home games. From our home, we can hear the band, the cheerleaders, the crowd. If it's lit up at night and there's clouds, the sky is lit up. 2 miles away. So we're 100 yards from this property where this event center could take place, could be lit up all night long. We would hear everything. What would our options be? To sell our house and move. Who would buy a house? Our house is our biggest investment. Thank you.
That's time. 4 seconds. Anybody wants them. We will request one other if anybody wants the 4 seconds. See, not, we will close out the rebuttal time, and we'll look for questions from board or staff.
I just had one question about.
Speaking to the mic, please.
I just had one question about 7 days a week, 8 hour, 8 a.m. to 12 midnight. Is that what I understood? Yes, sir. For the,
Come up to the podium, please.
I don't know if there are any Carroll County ordinances dealing with hours of operation, but obviously an event center for things like weddings, retirement parties are not going to be operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't know who said that. Are you reading that from something?
yeah, the hours, I think you said the hours would be 8 a.m. to 12 midnight?
No, I didn't say.
You didn't say
no,
that?
ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So that was just mentioned. That's what I was trying to clarify.
That was Mr. Polk's testimony under oath.
I'm sorry?
That was Mr. Polk's testimony under oath. 8 a.m. until midnight, 7 days a week, under oath. It's in those deposition pages over there. And to cherry pick and say it'll be retirement parties and not fraternities is a little disingenuous for what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Staff or board?
Commissioners, I have a few comments I'd like to make. It was sent to you earlier today in an email at 10:25 a.m. I had a note about the rezoning of moving Farmers High in front of this particular application. But there was also a link to Chapter 6 Transportation, a PDF, and I won't read the whole thing to you, but I do want you to know that in 2005, the Chattahoochee-Flint Regional Development Center completed a regional bicycle and pedestrian plan that includes Carroll County, as well as the counties surrounding us. Along with inventorying existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities and activities, the plan formulated goals and strategies for the ongoing development of these modes of transportation. The bicycle routes included in this plan are also shown in Map 15 Appendix B, and those are also included for you. Within the last 18 months, I had mentioned to you before that the Friends of the Greenbelt have purchased for us a template to put out and spray paint on the roads like they do in Atlanta and other existing communities with bike routes so that we can remind motorists that this is a share the road. And so I'd like to remind you of that we do have Martin Cemetery here and 25 miles in the district around it. But that was included in that email earlier today. I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out to you. I also went back, and since January 2015, when I took office, I've gone back and looked at all the minutes, and we have approved those applications that already had an existing facility of a barn or a cabin, and those were the words that were used in the actual application. So I'd like to remind you that we have not, while I was on board, voted for any conditional use of a facility that has not been built on ag land.
Any other comments? Any other discussion? Staff, Board of Commissioners. Seeing none, we'll look for a motion from the board.
I make a motion to deny this application.
I'll second.
We have a motion of denial and a second. Now we'll open the floor for any discussion.
I would like to say, Chairman, that, you know, I am been classified as an ag commissioner. And once we put facilities like this in on ag property, I don't think you're going to grow any more hay, and I don't think you're going to have any more cows walking around. So, I mean, I think that it's a beautiful property. I just don't think I think the location is, I mean, I think that the plan that he has is a beautiful building. I personally do not think it's in the right area. I think we've got to protect and take it seriously with protecting our rural part of Carroll County. We have to protect it. We have to do that and protect our citizens.
Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion, we have a second, no further discussion. All those in favor of the denial, please let it be known. All those opposed. All those opposed, please like sign. Seeing none.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that motion.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none. Commission meeting adjourned.